They told us their journey was the hard part. They said once you cross the water, once the plane touched foreign soil, once your feet stood on the land of opportunity, the worst will be behind you. But what if arrival is not the finish line? What if arrival is the beginning of a quieter war? Across Europe, Britain, USA, Canada, and beyond, African migrants are dying not in deserts, not in detention centers, not in rubber boats, but after arrival. They die in places meant to represent safety. They die in rooms meant to represent progress. They die quietly after surviving loudly. In shared apartments, on factory floors, in cold rooms where heaters barely work. In silence. These are not deaths that trend. They do not come with headlines. They are explained away with a shrug. Natural causes, stress, unknown complications. Yet the pattern remains. Young men collapsing after night shifts. Women found unresponsive in shared apartments. People in their 30s die as if old age caught them early. This is not a story about borders. It is a story about burdens. Not about visas, but about veins strained under invisible weights. Not about crossing oceans, but about what happens when the body, the mind, and the spirit are asked to perform miracles daily, without rest, without mercy, without witnesses. This is dying after arrival, and this is the crisis no one prepared for us. This three-part series sets out to confront one of the most uncomfortable truths of our time: the myth of escape and the cost of believing it. We began with Drowning in Dreams, Africa's Youth and the Perilous Journey to Europe, where we traced the origins of the Exodus, not just the physical journeys across deserts and seas, but the psychological departure long before the boats ever left shore. We examined how broken systems, imported aspirations, social pressure, and curated images of success abroad have turned migration into a rite of passage, one pursued even when the risks are well known and the graves are visible. In the second episode, Running from Africa, Escape, Illusion, or Slow Death, we interrogated the idea of flight itself. Is living truly an escape or merely a relocation of suffering? We peeled back the illusion of salvation abroad and asked other questions about responsibility, self-denial, internalized inferiority, and the uncomfortable possibility that what many are running from is not only Africa, but the work of rebuilding it. We are concluding this series with this episode, Dying After Arrival, the unspoken crisis facing African migrants abroad. Shifting the focus to what happens after the applause of arrival fades. Here, we expose the silent epidemics, exhaustion, isolation, undocumented labor, untreated illness, psychological collapse, and sudden deaths that rarely make headlines. This final chapter will force us to confront a painful reality. For many, survival abroad is not living, and arrival does not mean safety. Together, these three conversations form a single narrative, a journey from hope to illusion to consequence. Not to shame, not to discourage movement, but to strip the lie bare and demand honesty. Because until we tell the full story, before departure, during the journey, and after arrival, we will keep burying dreams alongside bodies and calling it destiny.
Strength of Africa TV presents
We landed with hope folded deep in our chest. Build lives out of overtime, fear and unrest. Cold nights, long shifts, no room to slow down. We learned how to live by not breaking down. Till the body gave in where the dream stood tall. And the price of surviving was losing it all. We made it abroad, but we're fading away. Not taken by oceans, but worked into grace. We crossed into promise and vanished from view. Survived the escape, only to lose ourselves too.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Depending on where you are at this moment, I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV, where truth meets courage, where the past is reawakened, and the future of the motherland is reclaimed. Today's episode is titled, Dying After Arrival, the Unspoken Crisis Facing African Migrants Abroad. Let's start with the dream as a contract. Migration is sold to Africans like a contract written in disappearing ink. On the surface, it promises elevation, money, respect, escape. But hidden between the lines is a clause no one reads aloud. You must succeed or you must not return. Failure is not an option because failure is expensive. Someone sold land. Someone borrowed money. Someone took risks to finance the journey. From the moment a migrant arrives, the clock begins to tick. Family expectations back home become interest rates. Every call from home is a balance check. Every message carries an unspoken question. Has it paid off yet? Every request for support becomes a reminder that retreat is not acceptable. The migrant is no longer a person. It becomes a project. She becomes an investment. And investments are not allowed to fail. So, the body is pushed beyond its warnings. Sleep becomes optional. Pain becomes background noise. Illness becomes an inconvenience postponed for later because later is a luxury migrants believe they cannot afford. The dream does not ask if the body can keep up. It assumes compliance. Now, a look at the body under foreign laws. The African body arrives abroad calibrated for a different rhythm. The body migrates, but biology does not negotiate. African bodies are conditioned by sun, rhythm, diet, and communal pacing. Then suddenly, they dropped into environments where daylight disappears for months, where food is processed beyond recognition, where labor is mechanical and relentless. But the new environment does not negotiate. Cold climate stiffens joints and lungs. Long winters drain vitamin D, energy, and mood. Shift work disrupts circadian rhythms the body has known since childhood. Factories do not care about acclimatization. Warehouses do not pause for adaptation. Cleaning jobs, night shifts, delivery routes, construction sites, these are not unfamiliar merely in skill, but in biological demand. The body protests quietly at first. Fatigue, chest discomfort, persistent headaches, irregular breathing. But migrants learn a dangerous lesson early. Complete slow progress. Because taking a day off means losing hours. Losing hours means losing rent. Losing rent means shame. And shame to the migrant feels more frightening than death. And so, the body's warning becomes background noise until they become final. Let's examine healthcare as a locked door. In theory, healthcare exists. In practice, it is a maze with invisible walls. Healthcare abroad is often described as accessible, but accessibility assumes confidence, language, documentation, and time. Appointments take weeks. Paperwork assumes fluency migrants do not yet have. Fear of cost lingers even in systems labeled free. Fear of immigration status, real or imagined, keeps many away entirely. Many migrants avoid hospitals not because they are careless, but because they are cautious. Cautious of being misunderstood, cautious of missing work, cautious of consequences they do not fully understand. So, sickness is managed informally. Painkillers replace diagnosis. Home remedies replace screenings. WhatsApp advice replaces medical professionals. Conditions that could have been managed, hypertension, diabetes, heart irregularities, stress-induced complications are normalized and left unattended, growing quietly, patiently, until the body stops negotiating. Then one morning, the body collapses, and the report reads sudden death, cause unclear. But the cause was not unclear, it was simply ignored for too long. Let's have a look at the pressure to perform. Abroad, migrants must perform success even while drowning. Success must be feasible even if it is artificial. Photos are curated, stories are edited, struggles are hidden behind filtered smiles. No one posts the exhaustion. No one posts the anxiety. No one records the breakdowns. No one admits that survival feels heavier than hope. No one uploads the night spent staring at ceilings, calculating bills in the dark. Because to admit struggle feels like betrayal. Of parents who sold land, of relatives who borrowed money, of communities that had farewell parties filled with hope. So, the migrant becomes an actor on a collapsing stage. Applause comes from afar, but backstage, the lungs burn. So, migrants smile while drowning, and pressure, when internalized long enough, becomes lethal. My family, what about loneliness as a slow poison? Loneliness abroad is not absence. It is isolation surrounded by noise. It is loud in the evening. It echoes in small rooms. It hums in the absence of familiar voices. Back home, community was automatic. Abroad, connection must be scheduled, negotiated, and work replaces community. Bills replace conversations. Silence fills evenings. Many migrants live surrounded by people yet untouched by intimacy. They work with others but belong to none. They speak daily yet rarely heard. Loneliness weakens immunity. It elevates stress hormones. It deepens depression. And depression does not always announce itself with tears. Sometimes it announces itself with silence. It simply drains the will to care. Now, a closer examination of work that consumes. Migrant labor is praised for resilience but designed for depletion. The jobs migrants take are often described as entry level, but the toll is advanced. Night shifts reverse the body clock. Physical labor punishes muscles already strained. Multiple jobs compress rest into fragments. Sleep becomes negotiable. Nutrition becomes secondary. Rest becomes guilt-inducing. The migrant learns to survive on 4 hours of sleep, then 3, then 2. Coffee replaces breakfast. Energy drinks replaces meal. Rest becomes a rumor, and the heart obedient, tireless, keeps beating faster, harder, until one day it refuses. Not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion. Let's look into the weather, environment, and shock. Climate shock is rarely discussed, but deeply consequential. The body is not a machine that resets on arrival. Sudden exposure to cold, damp climates affect circulation and respiratory systems. Lack of sunlight alters mood and metabolism. Environmental allergens, pollution, and indoor heating systems introduce new stressors. These changes matter, but they are rarely discussed in migration narratives. The migrant is expected to adapt instantly to climate, to culture, and labor, without guidance, without preparation, without grace. Adaptation is assumed, not supported, and adaptation without support accelerates breakdown. Let's ask a question. Is there something deeper? When death repeats, questions arise. Is it only stress, only labor, only neglect? Or is it the cumulative violence of a system that treats migrant lives as replaceable inputs? A system that welcomes labor but withholds care, that celebrates productivity but ignores humanity, that counts output, not heartbeats. This is not about conspiracy, it's about structure. And structures can kill without intent, simply by design. Migrant deaths do not disrupt economies. They are absorbed quietly, and silence becomes policy. Now, a look at the silence that follows death. When a migrant dies abroad, the silence is swift. Often, the first notice does not come from authorities, unions, or employers, but from a frantic call among friends. It didn't wake up. News travels informally, through friends, roommates, WhatsApp groups. Families receive fragmented explanations. Medical clarity is rare. No sirens heard by family. No official briefing translated into familiar language. Just shock, confusion, and disbelief moving quietly through WhatsApp groups and late-night phone calls. Bodies are repatriated quietly. In many cases, the cost of returning a body home becomes the community's burden. Fundraisers are organized not to ask why the person died, but simply to ensure they are buried on familiar soil. The urgency of burial replaces the urgency of inquiry. Fundraisers replace investigations. Crowdfunding pages fill with phrases like sudden illness, brief sickness, unexpected passing. Rarely do they include medical clarity. Rarely do they question working conditions, exhaustions, or prior complaints of pain that were ignored. Communities mourn briefly, then move on. Because grief competes with survival. Those still alive must return to shifts, bills, and responsibilities. Money becomes a luxury postponed indefinitely. No systemic questions are asked. No one asks why young men in their 30s collapse after night shifts. No one asks why women juggling caregiving jobs and warehouse work die quietly in shared apartments. No one asks why natural causes appear repeatedly among people who were medically functional months earlier. In the UK, young warehouse workers collapse after night shifts. In Italy, agricultural laborers die in shared housing. In Germany, delivery riders suffer fatal cardiac events. In Spain, domestic workers die quietly between shifts. No patterns interrogated. Deaths in Italy mirror deaths in the UK. Deaths in Germany echo deaths in Spain. Different countries, same story, same silence. No accountability demanded. Employers issue brief condolences. Authorities close files. The system exists and continues. Death becomes an unfortunate footnote in the migration story, never the headline. It does not trend because it does not threaten power. It does not outrage because it has been normalized. And silence ensures repetition. Let's examine what could have been prevented. Many of these deaths were avoidable, not in theory but in practice. With proper health screening, basic cardiovascular checks, routine blood pressure monitoring, early detection of conditions that stress and cold environment exacerbates, with mental health support, not emergency hotlines alone, but culturally competent counseling that acknowledges migrant prayer, isolation, and expectation fatigue. Spaces where migrants can admit struggle without feeling like failures, with realistic narratives about life abroad. Stories that include exhaustion, loneliness, and adaptation, not just currency conversion rates and success myths. Preparation that treats migration as a psychological transition, not just a geographic one. With rest treated as necessity, not laziness. With labor protections enforced, not merely written. With limits on night shifts, excessive overtime, and exploitative scheduling that erodes the body silently. But prevention does not profit systems built on extraction. Systems that rely on migrant labor are often structured for maximum output at minimal cost. Wellness slows productivity. Rest reduces margins. Care complicates efficiency. And migrants desperate to survive rarely pause long enough to demand better. Because demanding better risks visibility. And visibility for many migrants feels dangerous. So, survival becomes a negotiation with death, one shift at a time. Migration should not be a delayed death sentence. It should not require sacrificing health to prove worth. It should not demand silence in exchange for survival. Arrival should not come with a countdown. Yet, for many migrants, the bodies begin aging faster the moment the plane lands. Stress accelerates time. Pressure shortens futures. Opportunity should not demand the body as collateral. No dream is worth a heart attack at 35. No currency is worth dying quietly in a rented room. The crisis facing African migrants abroad is not mysterious. It is unspoken. It is buried under politeness, under gratitude narratives, under the fear of appearing ungrateful for opportunity. And what remains unspoken continues unchecked. If we are to speak honestly about migration, we must tell the whole story, not just the departure, not just the remittances, not just the success stories, but the cost. Because behind every remittance is a tired body. Behind every success story is a pressure rarely shown. Behind every silence is a warning ignored. Because surviving the journey only to die after arrival is not success. It is tragedy disguised as progress. And until we name it, confront it, and prepare our people for its realities, the silence will keep claiming lives. Not at the border, not in the desert, not in the sea, but long after. I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV. If you found value in this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Endeavor to join our membership to help us grow and give us super thanks. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer. For advert placement, visit us online at Strength of Africa TV. Watch out for the next episode. You don't want to miss it. Until then, tell your own story. Because Africa's future is written in African ink. Stay rooted, stay bold, stay African. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode. Bye.
We landed with hope, folded deep in our chest.
20-year-old male, hypotensive.
Build lives out of overtime, fear and unrest.
And hypertensive.
Cold nights, long shifts, no room to slow down.
What's his status? How long was the
We
downtime?
learned how to live by not breaking down.
7 airways pattern. Right,
Till
straight
the
through to rest.
body gave in where the dream stood tall. And the price of surviving was losing it all. We made it abroad, but we're fading away. Not taken by oceans, but worked into grace. We crossed into promise and vanished from view. Survived the escape, only to lose ourselves too.
7 airways pattern. Alright, straight through to rest now.
We made it abroad, but we're fading away. Not taken by oceans, but worked into grace. We crossed into promise and vanished from view. Survived the escape, only to lose ourselves too.